You're listening to the I'm Busy Being Awesome podcast with Paula Engebretson, episode number 255. Hey, everybody. Welcome back to the podcast. I am thrilled that you are here today. This episode is one that I have been so excited to explore with you. Today, we are delving into the world of ChatGPT, and we're looking at why I think it's frankly such a powerful tool, particularly for those of us navigating life with ADHD or ADHD tendencies. Now, there's been a lot of interest in this topic in the world of AI and ChatGPT specifically, and I cannot wait to dive into it together because I truly believe it could be a game changer for a lot of us ADHD brains. As I've alluded to a few times on the podcast now, I think that ChatGPT and the similar AI tools, the other ones out there, I think they have the potential to significantly lighten the cognitive load that so many of us with ADHD experience on a daily basis. So today, what we're going to do is look at some of these innovative solutions and how they can really empower us in our day-to-day lives and offer practical strategies to really make the most of how we're showing up and how we're using our focus and attention each day. So in this episode, what we're going to do is start by talking about ChatGPT and what it is generally, so we can kind of grasp what's actually going on there. And then we're going to look at some common concerns that people may have about chat and about using AI. I will share my own thoughts on this one, which you are, as always, welcome to take or leave. And then we'll look at why I do think that chat can be a particularly beneficial tool for adults with ADHD, especially in terms of helping us to reduce the cognitive load that so many of us experience. We carry such a heavy cognitive load. And we're also going to talk about ways that it can help us really enhance our productivity by streamlining tasks and offering suggestions. And then finally, we're going to talk through some very practical strategies for ways that you can make the most of ChatGPT. And I'll share ways that I love to use it in my life. And I even have a free download. I'll mention it now so I don't forget, but I have a free download. You can grab it through the link in the show notes, and it shares specific prompts that you can literally copy and paste right into ChatGPT, or you can alter it to fit your specific scenario. So you can literally implement what you hear today right away. And to get that cheat sheet, you can go to the link in the show notes and tap right through there, or just go to I'mBusyBeingAwesome.com/chat, and you'll be able to grab the free download with a bunch of prompts that you can implement right away. So with that being said, let's start from the beginning. What in the world is ChatGPT? So I'm going to give my basic understanding and also some analogies to help kind of put things into context. For those of you super familiar with AI, I apologize if some of the intricacies are off, but I do think I have a basic overview down, enough for us to kind of understand what we're working with here. Okay, so ChatGPT, it's short for Chat Generative Pre-trained Transformer. Basically, it is this AI-powered language model. Okay. And the role of ChatGPT is to help its users, help us with different tasks that involve language processing. Okay. And don't worry, I'm going to break this down and put it in human language. Okay. But chat was basically developed by OpenAI, and it's part of the GPT series of models, all within this same chat family. And ChatGPT uses something called deep learning techniques so that it can understand and then generate text-based responses on whatever information you give it. So in other words, you write something, and then based on the way that ChatGPT has been programmed with this deep learning, it's able to respond with a human-like response instead of ones and zeros. And I'm sure many of you have interacted with these type of AI tools already. If you've returned something on Amazon and talked with the chat, you've interacted with something like this. Any website that pops up with some sort of chatbot at the bottom of the screen, it's using something similar. So ChatGPT basically works by processing the information you give it, and then it creates these responses that are based on patterns that it's learned during its training phase. Okay? So what does that mean? What is this training phase? What are we even talking about? So essentially, ChatGPT has access to a huge amount of text from the internet, right? It can just access stuff from the internet, which allows it to start learning the nuances of language and context. And this training process helps ChatGPT start generating these coherent, relevant responses to our questions and our requests, things that actually make sense. Now, you may have totally tuned out all the things that I just said because it sounds too weird and abstract. And if that's you, no worries, because that's how I felt when I first started reading and trying to understand it. And so I thought, okay, I need some sort of analogy to better understand this. I need to really kind of wrap my mind around it. And so I went to ChatGPT and I asked for help. I said, hey, can you provide some sort of analogy to help me better understand how this works? And Chat responded with a handful of different options, which helped me better understand it. And then I could put some expansion around it to really bring it to life in my mind. So the two examples that they offered were Chat is like a knowledgeable librarian in a big library. And the other was that Chat is like a musician who can improvise. Okay, so let's kind of break this down to better understand what's going on here. So let's start with the librarian analogy first. Okay, so imagine that ChatGPT is like this knowledgeable librarian in a huge library. Okay, it's filled with all the books, all the things, which essentially represents all the information on the internet. Okay, it's a really big library. And when you ask ChatGPT a question, or you give ChatGPT a prompt, it's basically like asking this librarian for information. So the librarian, right, ChatGPT, goes and searches through the library with all the training data that it's learned to find the most relevant books, the most relevant information, and provides it to you with an answer. Okay, so the librarian goes to what it's trained, comes back and says, okay, here's what I know based on all the information I have access to. And then the other analogy that I really liked, perhaps not surprisingly, is that ChatGPT is like this talented musician improvising jazz. So jazz musicians are basically able to listen to the notes that other people play, right? If they're sitting there improvising with a group or whatever, and that musician is able to respond with their own music, and it makes sense in the piece that they're playing because they've practiced and they've learned so much music already, right? They've practiced the blues scales and they've listened to a bunch of jazz records and they've played music at other different gigs and things. And they can pull from all of that knowledge to then improvise within the right key and the current style of jazz that they're playing. Okay, so ChatGPT is just like that musician. It has learned all of these different things so it can improvise and come back with information that it knows that fits the type of question you're asking. Okay, so ChatGPT basically listens to the questions and the prompts you provide, and it responds with the text generated based on these patterns that it's learned. Okay, again, like a musician, it can improvise to create some sort of coherent conversation. So I hope that these analogies give you kind of a general understanding of how chat works and how it's learned this information from the internet. And in terms of what it actually looks like, ChatGPT is basically like a big message thread. You type in a question or a prompt and that appears in the screen, and then chat responds right underneath like you're in a big text thread. You go back and forth, essentially having a conversation with ChatGPT. Now, that's how it works generally. Let's talk about some of the most common concerns I hear from people when it comes to using ChatGPT, their worries about ChatGPT. There's kind of three different categories that tend to come up the most. First of which is privacy. Okay, so people worry about privacy when they're interacting with AI generally and with ChatGPT, fear of personal information being misused or maybe accessed by different people, or concerns about data security, data breaches, surveillance, that kind of thing. Okay. The second area of concern is accuracy. So there's a lot of doubt around the accuracy of the responses that chat provides and skepticism regarding AI's ability to actually understand the context and provide relevant information. There's a fear of receiving incorrect information and also concerns about bias in the AI algorithms that might lead to inaccurate or inappropriate types of responses. Okay, so that's the second area. And then the third most common critique or pushback is a reliance on technology. So I often hear that people are worried that we'll become overly dependent on AI technology like ChatGPT. And there's a fear of losing our critical thinking skills or our ability to solve problems independently, and concerns about technology kind of replacing human interaction, human creativity, and this anxiety about relying too heavily on AI for creating things, making decisions, retrieving information, etc. Okay. So they are legitimate concerns. They are there. And I do think that everybody's going to have different levels of comfort with whether they want to engage in these types of tools or not. Now, here's what I understand, and here's where I fall. Again, take it or leave it, but here's where I'm at with this. First of all, in terms of the user data and anonymity, okay? So when you interact with ChatGPT, your personal information, basically your name, it is stripped away from any of the conversation in the data, okay? And so you have this safeguard against any kind of unauthorized access to your data because your name's not attached to anything. Additionally, there's encryption of these interactions, okay? So in terms of the security of your chat, every interaction that you have with ChatGPT is encrypted. So that helps to prevent any kind of data interception. Now, can that still happen? Probably. But as I'm going to be talking about and giving examples later on, what I'm using ChatGPT for is not personal data. I'm looking at things like, how can I make my meal prep easier? Or how can I write an email where I say, no, I can't help with carpooling this week? Okay, so I'm not looking at anything where if someone were to see it, I mean, I don't care. So again, everyone's level of comfort is different. Personal preference, check in with yourself. For myself, the benefits far outweigh somebody else figuring out whether I had an omelet at breakfast or what have you. You know, I'm not asking ChatGPT anything that I wouldn't be comfortable having anyone else see anyway. Okay, so for myself, that feels okay. Now, when it comes to the next main concern, which is around accuracy, right? What if ChatGPT is inaccurate and not providing correct things? I do think this is a legitimate concern. I have seen many times when I have asked questions and ChatGPT starts just spitting out nonsense. It doesn't make any sense at all. Okay, so if you're using it to do any kind of research, you definitely want to check your sources. Just as you do with anything you read on the internet, right? We can't take what we read as fact. We need to check the facts. But again, since we're not looking for legal support or medical information when we're interacting with chat, at least in the way that I'm using it, in the way that I think it can help us lighten the cognitive load, you know, we're looking at how we can streamline some of our demanding routines and workflows, right? When it's that kind of situation, you can really use your own discernment to read it and go, okay, well, do I think that would be helpful for my brain in making things easier or not? You might read it and go, no, that doesn't seem easier. Okay, on to the next, right? So again, it's not like you're doing any kind of deep research with the stuff that we're looking at here today, but I do want to mention that if you do get into that space and you do start wanting to research things, there are definitely times when ChatGPT is not accurate and you'll want to double check and reference just as you would with any other type of information on the internet. Now, in terms of the fear that we'll become too reliant on technology, again, this is totally possible, okay? It's possible that ChatGPT could contribute to our over-reliance on tech. However, again, that's not how I see the role of ChatGPT coming into play in the way that I use it and the way that I'm going to be sharing how I use it today, okay? So I think of ChatGPT more like augmenting what I'm thinking about. It helps to work through technical things so I can let my creative thinking do the magic. So it's kind of like the sidekick or the co-pilot. It can do some things, but we still need the human brain offering direction and the creative lens and thinking through the different answers. It's kind of like having a calculator, okay? Yeah, you could just sit down with a pen and paper and crunch numbers all the time, but you could also use a calculator to get it done so much faster so you can take those numbers, that data, and actually work with them in useful ways. Okay, so ChatGPT in my mind works in the same way. it's kind of like using a calculator. Yes, I could sit down and write out all the numbers and try and get the math right. Try being the operative word for me. And you could get that information eventually, or you could use something like a calculator that does it much quicker. So then you can dive in and do the other work you want to do much faster. Okay, then you can pull from your critical thinking on how you want to use the data you gathered quickly. So I hope all of this gives you just a better understanding of what ChatGPT is and some of the general concerns out there, and also how I tend to think about them. Again, you get to decide what you think about them, the concerns you have, if you want to work with ChatGPT or not. If not, no problem, right? Not a problem at all. But if you are open to the idea of playing around with chat, of seeing how you might use it to lighten the cognitive load for you, let's talk about some specific ways and some prompts that we can use to help our neurodivergent brains, shall we? So it's no secret, our ADHD brains often face significant hurdles in managing our day-to-day tasks because we struggle with our executive functions, okay? So we regularly come up against these obstacles when it comes to things like planning, organizing, breaking down tasks, prioritization, emotional regulation, impulsivity, right? All of these areas that tie in with our executive functions. And all of this, of course, makes it quite a bit more challenging to stay on track because the brain is working extra hard to do all of this work. Well, ChatGPT comes into play as this support to help essentially alleviate some of that heavy workload that is taxing our executive functions, right? It comes in to help us manage our day-to-day tasks more effectively. So let's talk about some specific examples where this comes into play. And we'll start with, as I mentioned, chat being particularly useful in helping reduce the cognitive load, especially when we offload tasks like organizing our to-do list or our thought downloads, generating ideas, giving us a place to start rather than staring at a blank page, feeling frozen. It can help us with breaking down projects. We've talked about something like Magic To Do before, which is also a type of AI that helps with this, right? The Goblin.tools. All of these different supports really allow us to focus our creative and mental energy more effectively because we're able to focus on the things that really matter, and ChatGPT does the heavy lifting on the other side. So let me give you an example. Maybe you use it to help you organize your thoughts. Let's say you're feeling super overwhelmed, thinking about all the different things you need to do for this project for work, and you don't even know where to begin. You know this feeling, right? You're just like, oh my gosh, there's so much. So what you could do is essentially dump everything you're thinking about for that project into chat. Just type it all out. You can even speak it all out. Let it be messy. It doesn't need to make sense. And ChatGPT can help you structure your ideas, break down the complex concepts into these more digestible pieces. Another way that you can use it, as I mentioned, is generating ideas, okay? Chat can be really an awesome brainstorming partner. Let me give you an example. I knew, as I mentioned, that I wanted to provide some sort of analogy for how ChatGPT actually works. Remember how I mentioned that earlier? So when I was thinking about that, I went, okay, let's be really meta here and go to ChatGPT and ask them for some analogies to describe ChatGPT. And it offered a whole bunch of different suggestions. The librarian and the musician really stood out to me. And then I went in and I built on those suggestions. And I thought about, for example, how the musician needs to learn the scales and listen to different music and play the different charts to really make this idea come to life. Okay? So again, it can help you to generate ideas and give you something to work with and expand upon creatively. Another way it can be helpful is streamlining communication. Okay, so ChatGPT can really help to facilitate smoother communication by drafting emails, drafting messages, summarizing really complex information. So for example, there are times when I come upon an article that I want to read, I think, but I'm not quite sure. So I will copy and paste it into ChatGPT and I will say, highlight the main bullet points in this content. And then if it's speaking to the thing that I think it's going to speak to, then I will go in and actually read it. And if not, I've just saved myself a bunch of time trying to read this article when I'm like, oh, this actually doesn't have anything to do with the thing I thought it did, right? So it can save time. It can help summarize things. So many different ways to efficiently use your time when it comes to communication, reading information, that sort of thing. Another powerful place is with task management. So chat can help us to create our to-do lists, to break down projects, to estimate timelines, to map out goals. Now, again, it's not always accurate. It's not always going to give you an accurate time estimate, but it gives you a place to start. And it can remove some of that overwhelm of having to do everything on your own, starting from a blank page. You can go in and say, I have this project to do. I have no idea where to start. Can you break it down for me? And then it will. You might have to make some adjustments. You might say, oh, don't forget about this part, and it'll adjust it. And then you can say, how much time do I need? Can you help me break down the time? And again, you can go in and bringing in your insight and your knowledge of your specific situation, you can make adjustments as you need to. Okay? Now, more specifically, I think that ChatGPT can be super supportive with work-specific settings. Again, especially in terms of communication, helping to manage deadlines and priorities, mapping out projects, summarizing information. And the example that really stands out to me is one that I used just a couple of weeks ago. So I was doing a free training a month or two ago, and I had typed up all the notes that I wanted to present. I had everything prepared. And then I was about to go through and pull out all my bullet points so I could make my flip chart, right? The slides basically for my presentation. And so I was about to start and I went, hold on. What if I just copy and paste everything that I've written out that I want to present into ChatGPT, and I say, please highlight 4 to 5 bullet points for each section to include in my presentation slides. And it did. And of course, I made a few adjustments, but it was such a lighter lift than having to go through my entire presentation, especially after just writing it and doing all the work. And I did it in probably half the time that it would have taken if I did it myself. Now, I'm actually just thinking, I haven't done this one before, but I'm remembering when I was in my previous career, when I was a professor, I used to get so anxious before going to conferences and giving presentations. Okay. So in my field, we'd usually give about a 20-minute paper, and then we'd have a 10-minute Q&A afterward. And the Q&A, I dreaded it so much. I would get so worried that people were going to ask questions I couldn't answer, and my rejection sensitivity would get so big, and I'd often get really dysregulated when I was presenting, and my prefrontal cortex essentially would leave the building, so I couldn't even think clearly. And so I'm just thinking, if at that time I had ChatGPT, I would have put my entire conference talk into chat and said, identify potential questions the audience might ask. And then I would practice answering them. And then I would say, identify 10 more questions the audience might ask. And I'd practice answering those. I would totally do that if I was still in that space. For those of you in school, or you're in a different program, right? You're learning something in some way. You could use chat to help quiz you, or to make flashcards or something. You could copy and paste your notes from class into ChatGPT. You could say, I'm especially focusing on these 6 concepts or whatever. Please create some flashcards for me to study. And chat will organize it so you can just copy it down onto the flashcards, or copy and paste it literally into a Word document or something and print it out into flashcards. So the options, I'm telling you, they are really endless once you get your creative juices flowing, and especially once you identify for yourself the specific areas that feel sticky. I'm trying to do a really broad overview of different ways you can use it, because I know each of us has different areas that we navigate, different areas that are challenging. But again, when you think specifically about your unique area, I think you'll be really amazed at the different ways that chat can specifically support you. So with that in mind, let's actually talk about specific prompts, specific things that you could literally take and type right into ChatGPT and get the support that you were looking for. Okay. As I mentioned, I do have that cheat sheet with all the different things that we're going to talk about today, plus a whole bunch more prompts. You can just, again, copy and paste them directly into ChatGPT. It's a great place to start. I'm going to share a handful of different quick win categories where you could start using it today and help your brain start seeing the possibility of ways chat could help you almost immediately. So as you listen, again, notice the areas where you find yourself especially frustrated or where you often feel stuck or overwhelmed. And again, if I don't speak to those particular areas today, I bet you could use one that I do explore and kind of insert your particular area instead. And I know it sounds kind of abstract right now, but once we dive in, it will make sense. So up first, we're going to look at tasks, time, breaking down projects, okay? So in terms of this category, I'm going to give specific prompts that you might play with, okay? So you might type in to ChatGPT, I'm having trouble starting XYZ. Can you help me break it down into smaller steps? Or what are the first few things I need to do to tackle XYZ project? Okay, you can type those right into chat and it will spit it right out with specific steps. In fact, I am going to pull up, let's see, ChatGPT. I did this just to test it out and I did it for podcast. I said, I'm having trouble starting to write my podcast episode. Can you help me break it down into smaller steps? Just as an example to share here. And chat wrote back, of course, let's break down the process of writing your podcast episode into smaller, manageable steps. Number 1, choose a topic. Decide on the topic you want to explore in your podcast episode. It could be something you're passionate about, timely, something your audience has expressed interest in. Number 2, research. Gather information and resources related to your chosen topic. Number 3, an outline. Create an outline, so on and so forth. And it goes through lucky number 13. All the way through to publish, okay? So step by step, ChatGPT takes you through the process. And again, you can correct it. You could say, you forgot about this thing, or, oh, I don't actually need to edit it. Please stop at this step, but add more detail here. And you can have this conversation back and forth to make it exactly what you need. You can also use chat in terms of prioritization. So maybe you have a prompt like, I have a lot on my plate. I have ADHD and struggle with prioritization. Can you help me figure out which tasks I should focus on first? Here is my current to-do list, right? And then chat would respond with its suggestions. Or maybe you say, my long-term goals include XYZ. Knowing this, what tasks are most important for me to complete today? Okay, and then you list the tasks on your list and let chat do the decision making. Again, you don't have to follow it blindly. Bring in your own knowledge as well. But this will help you to sort through the noise. Chat is also super supportive when it comes to managing time, which is such a wonderful thing for those of us with ADHD. So you might say something like, I have ADHD and struggle with time blindness. How much time should I allocate to XYZ task? Or maybe it's in terms of project breakdown, project management. Maybe you say, I have a 6-month project and it feels really overwhelming. Can you help me break it down into manageable steps and set up a timeline for each phase? So are you seeing how chat can really come into play and do some of this heavy lifting? You could do it for creating a checklist for detailed projects. Could you help me create a checklist to ensure I cover all the steps required in XYZ task? You could do this for a packing list. I am traveling to this location. It will be X degrees and sunny. Will you please create a packing list ensuring that I don't forget anything, right? See what comes out. I also love ChatGPT to help with finding the gray in black and white thinking. Okay, a lot of us ADHDers struggle with black and white, all or nothing thinking, and ChatGPT can be really supportive here. It can help with exploring alternatives. Maybe you say, I'm feeling stuck in some black and white thinking. Can you suggest some alternative solutions for this problem? Or it seems like option A is the only answer to XYZ problem. What other options might I consider beside option A? Here's an example of that. It seems like getting a new planner is the only answer to getting my projects done on time. What other options could I consider besides getting a new planner that could help me solve for getting my projects done on time? So do you see how in the template question, right, I mentioned it seems like option A is the only one to answer XYZ problem. What you can do is literally put in your specific problem or obstacle and where the black and white thinking is, and let ChatGPT offer you some different responses. You might say, I'm struggling to see the bigger picture here. Can you provide some perspective on this issue? Or what would be helpful to consider about XYZ obstacle that I might be overlooking? So maybe you say, I'm trying to get out of black and white thinking. What would be helpful to consider about my colleague who's micromanaging the project? What might I be missing? And ChatGPT can give you a bunch of different reasons to help your mind go, okay, maybe there are these other things. ChatGPT can also be super useful with generating ideas and solutions. So maybe you say, I'm stuck on this project at work. Can you help me brainstorm some new ideas to approach it from a different angle? Or I'm planning a surprise birthday party for my friend, but I am totally out of creative ideas. Can you suggest some unique themes or activities? She's really into XYZ hobbies. Or I keep forgetting to pack my lunch for work. Can you help me come up with some quick and easy ideas that I can prepare in advance and also strategies to help me remember to do this? Let ChatGPT do the work. Okay? Speaking of which, let's speak specifically about food and meal prep, because I hear time and time again how much of a heavy lift this is for so many of us. Okay? So maybe you type something like, I'm feeling overwhelmed and don't know what to cook. Can you suggest a quick, easy meal that I can make with these things on hand? I have pantry staples and eggs in the fridge that I want to use. Or I don't have a lot of energy or time to prepare dinner and I'm really stressed. Please provide a simple recipe that I can make in 15 minutes with pasta. I actually wanted to do some planning for our meals on Saturday, just a couple of days ago, and I typed into chat, can you help me create a weekly meal plan that accommodates a dairy-free, high-protein diet? I'd like meals that are quick to prepare and require minimal ingredients. You do not need to provide breakfasts. Please focus on eggs, chicken, tuna, ground turkey, and beans as my main sources of protein. I also have several bags of frozen vegetables I'd like to use up, including cauliflower rice, vegetable medleys, broccoli, and peas. Okay, so I got very specific and chat came back with lunch and dinner for every day of the week with options like chicken and broccoli bowl, sauteed chicken and frozen broccoli until cooked through, season with soy sauce and sesame oil, serve over a bed of cauliflower rice or mixed greens. Okay. It was so helpful to not have to think through all the different options with the different protein I happen to have in my freezer and in my fridge, right? I was trying to use up the food I had in the house. So I just let ChatGPT know what I had and then put some different guidelines in it because I can't have dairy. And voila, I had an entire meal plan for the week in about 1 minute. Now, again, because I wanted to use up the food I had in the house, I was really specific. But there's other times where I may have said, please provide some dairy-free, high-protein, simple meals that I can make. And then it would provide them. And then I would say maybe, please provide a grocery list for the above menu for a family of 2 adults. And oh my gosh, is that so helpful when I don't have to worry about making the grocery list either. Come on. So again, in the free download, I have a whole bunch of different prompts, not only around food and menus and cooking, but also productivity and time management and home stuff, right? Lots of different categories that you can then play with to fit your preferences. For example, maybe you do one around developing a laundry schedule. Please help me create a laundry schedule and break it down into steps like sorting, washing, drying, putting away, and have it help you create that workflow. Maybe you have chat help you create a customized cleaning schedule. Maybe you say, I want to establish a cleaning schedule for my home. Ensure that it is manageable and no more than 15 minutes a day and covers all key areas like kitchen, bathrooms, and living spaces. So again, I know that this is such a wide range of prompts and topics that we've looked at today. It's intentional because I really want to show that you can use ChatGPT to support you in your unique situation. Whether you're breaking down tasks or generating ideas or writing a first draft of an email, chat can be this valuable support. And if you're open to it, I do encourage you to play around and see how it might be most helpful for you. Again, I have that free cheat sheet in the show notes at I'mBusyBeingAwesome.com/chat. You can check it out there. Give it a try. Let me know what works best for you. All right, my friends, that's going to do it for us this week. And if you're ready to take these concepts and apply them to your life, if you're ready to learn how to support your ADHD in a way that's best for you, I invite you to check out today's show notes where you can learn more about how we can work together, both in my small group coaching program, We're Busy Being Awesome, and in one-on-one coaching. And as a reminder, if you want to get your hands on the free cheat sheet to use ChatGPT in your life, simply head to I'mBusyBeingAwesome.com/chat to try it out and start lightening that cognitive load today. Until next time, keep being awesome. I'll talk with you soon.